Hello and welcome to System Analysis, where we take an in-depth look at the inner workings of some of the systems and mechanics in Fire Emblem Three Houses. Before we start, I would like to thank the people who have backed the channel on Patreon, more on this at the end of the video. Today, we will be taking a look at how class certifications work within the game. So as I am sure most of you are aware, when you go to certify for a class, you will see a percentage chance of the attempt being successful. If you meet the requirements of the class, this will always be 100% and you are guaranteed to succeed. But what exactly goes on behind the scenes to determine this chance when you don't have all of the requirements? Well, let's get a couple of static, unchanging things cleared up first. Number 1, in order to attempt a certification, you must be at least the required level of the class. There is no way around this. That's level 5 for beginner, level 10 for intermediate, level 20 for advanced and DLC classes, and level 30 for master. Number 2, in order to attempt the certification, you must have at least a 30% chance of passing the exam. Without this, you will not even be able to gamble it, the game simply won't let you. Number 3, the RNG that determines whether or not a unit will pass or fail locks in when a chapter starts. To change this RNG, you have to go back to before the chapter has begun. This concept of altering RNG by reloading saves like this is commonly known as save scumming. We will go into this in its full depth later in the video. Before we start, you can see whether a unit has passed or failed the exam during the little cutscene that plays while they are taking it. If they get the little storm cloud above their head, it means they have failed and will not certify for the class. If they get the musical notes, it means they have passed and will qualify for the class they are certifying for. Just a fun little thing to be aware of. Another thing to note is that units can only attempt one exam per day regardless of if they pass or fail, and exams can only be attempted on 3 days or on the day of that month's mission. Attempting a certification also requires the relevant seal, the name corresponding to the tier of the class in most cases, which is consumed regardless of the exam's outcome. Some classes are also unavailable to be certified for by certain units, with the main limitation here being the unit's gender. For example, Pegasus Knight is unavailable to males and Grappler is unavailable to females. Other classes are just not qualified for in the traditional way and are granted to specific units or become available at various plot points, such as Enlightened One, Dancer, or Death Knight. From here, let's establish the formula that is used to decide a unit's percent chance of whether they pass or fail an exam. This is shown on screen now, but basically the pass rate is equal to 100 minus A times B plus luck divided by 2. This means nothing at the minute, so let's go into it a bit more and start by getting the easy part out of the way first. Luck divided by 2 is, as expected, half of the unit's luck stat. The only thing to note here is that this is rounded up if the outcome is not a whole number, so if a unit has 11 luck, half of this is 5.5, this is rounded up to 6. Now there are two currently unknown variables here, represented by A and B. A is determined by the type of class that the unit is attempting to certify into. A has 3 potential values. If the class is a master class, A is always 20 with no exceptions. If the class is an advanced or DLC class where 2 or more skills are required for the exam, such as Assassin requiring swords and bows, or Paladin requiring lances and riding, A is 32. If the class is anything else, so a beginner or intermediate class, or an advanced class requiring only 1 skill, such as Sniper which only needs bows, A is 40. So Master is 20, Advanced and DLC needing 2 or more skills is 32, everything else is 40. B is much simpler. It is the total number of missing ranks that a unit has when attempting a certification. For example, if you were trying to certify for Sniper, which requires A bows, and you only had B plus bows, B would be equal to 1. If you had B bows, B would be equal to 2. If you had C plus bows, B would be equal to 3, and so on and so forth. If you were going for Paladin, needing B lances and B riding, but you had C plus in both areas, B would be equal to 2, since you are 2 ranks short in total. If you meet the requirements, B is obviously 0. One other thing to note is that there is never any benefit involving certifications to being higher than a requirement. For example, with the previous Paladin situation, if you instead had B plus lances instead of the B requirement, this has no additional impact over what just having B lances has. If you had B plus lance and C plus riding, B would still equal 1, because you are missing 1 riding rank. Let's run through some examples. Let's say Petra is attempting to qualify for Archer, which requires C bows to guarantee certification. However, she only has D+. At this time, she has a luck stat of 12. Archer is an intermediate class, so A would be equal to 40. She is missing 1 rank here, only having D plus bows instead of C, so B would be 1. This starts off the equation by multiplying 40 by 1, which is still 40, and then subtracting that number from 100, leaving 60. We then halve Petra's luck stat of 12, leaving us with 6, and add that onto the previous number, giving Petra a 66% chance to qualify for the Archer class in this scenario. However, if in this same scenario Petra only had D bows, B would now equal 2. 40 times 2 is 80, 100 minus 80 is 20, 20 plus 6 is 26, which is her percent chance of passing the qualification. This would mean Petra is not even able to attempt the qualification because, as mentioned earlier, you can't even try it with less than a 30% chance. For another example, Ignatz is trying to certify for War Master, a master class which requires A brawling and A axes. Unfortunately, he is well short of the requirements, having only B axes and B plus brawling, with a luck stat of 23, which is actually his average luck at level 30. Because War Master is a master class, A is equal to 20. Ignatz is missing 3 ranks, so B is equal to 3. 3 multiplied by 20 is 60, and 100 minus 60 is 40. We already know he is able to attempt the certification just from this. With a luck stat of 23, this is halved to 11.5, which is then rounded up to 12. 40 plus 12 is 52, which would be Ignatz's chance of passing this exam. You can see here that despite being very far behind the requirements, Ignatz would still succeed here more than half the time, and in fact he could even drop another rank and still be able to give it a shot thanks to his high luck, showing how impactful it can be to gamble these lower since he now requires significantly less investment to reach this, even before the luck is factored in. However, maybe you don't want those gambles to be gambles, and you want to rig the system in your favour to guarantee you can pass those exams at lower odds. Is there any way to influence your results? Well, let's revisit the concept of save scumming exams and break down how this really works into all of its ins and outs. For this example, we are going to use Dedu, who is trying to certify for the advanced class Wyvern Rider, which requires B axes and C flying. He has the axe rank locked in and well surpassed at A, but unfortunately he only has D flying, 2 ranks below the C requirement. Once we factor in his luck, which is currently at 16, so boosts his odds by half of this, pushing it up by 8, this leaves him with just a 44% chance of passing the exam. Not very likely. Dedu attempts the Wyvern Rider exam in week 1, and sadly we see the little storm cloud above his head and he fails.
I failed.
We reload a save from that week, but no matter how many times we try, Dedu fails the exam over and over and over again. This is because the RNG for this week is already locked in. No matter how many attempts we give it, it isn't going to move for this week and he will fail every single time. The RNG locks in for each week when the chapter starts. Basically, if the save file you are loading says the chapter you are playing, the roles have already been decided. In order to reshuffle this RNG, you will need to load the new chapter save, or anything prior to this. Through this, we are able to get some better luck, some more favourable odds, and Dedu is able to pass with just a 44% chance on that first week, no additional investment needed.
I passed.
Now, just because you fail one week, that doesn't mean you are destined to fail every week. The odds are different on each occasion where you can attempt the exam, so if you fail but you don't want to reload a new chapter save, you can attempt it on a later week in that same month and have a chance of passing. The last thing to explore here is what happens if we change his passing odds. Dedu fails week 1, so proceeds to week 2 to have another crack at qualifying for Wyvern Rider with just that 44% chance. Unfortunately, he fails once again. Now, we really want him to pass by week 2, but rather than reload a new chapter save, what if we reload a previous week, but in the tutoring sessions in between, raise Dedu's flying from D to C+. This still won't guarantee him the qualification, but it will give him much better odds. Can this change his fortunes? We can see that this now gives Dedu a 76% chance of passing the exam. It seems much more likely that he will succeed now, and he enters the exam, we see those musical notes pop up above his head, and he is able to qualify. It isn't just a binary pass or fail that's decided at the start of the month, raising the ranks can indeed turn a failure into a pass even if you don't reach the guarantee. The easiest way for me to visualize this is to basically assume a number between 1 and 100 is generated for each day where you can attempt qualification, and if the unit's chance of passing is equal or higher to that number, they will pass the exam. I'm not sure exactly if that's what's going on in the back end, but from a functional perspective, it's something equivalent. One final thing to note is that the RNG varies from unit to unit. This means that just because one unit fails an exam at a certain percentage, other units may still pass the exam at that same percent, as each unit has their own RNG here. In the same vein, the RNG is also class independent, so just because the unit fails one exam, they may still pass another exam with the same odds. As an example, Seteth here tries to certify for the Mercenary exam with a 66% chance, and is able to succeed, However, when we reload the save without shuffling the RNG and try for the Thief exam with that same 66% chance, he fails. That about wraps up everything there is to know with class certifications in Fire Emblem Three Houses. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or alternatively, a link to the Discord is in the description and you can ask them there. I would once again like to thank the people who have backed the channel on Patreon. For just £1 or $1.50 a month, you can get access to the scripts for my videos in case you want to revisit anything, as well as other things, such as voting on the release order for one of my other series, Breaking Down, where we take an in-depth look at each unit in the game. If you are interested, a link is in the description. Thank you all very much for watching, and goodbye.